before we get going, did you go back and watch the Alcaraz Djokovic match?
Did not. I saw. I was going to send you a clip from the Instagram. There's like did you watch the interviews afterwards?
Yes.
It was kind of fun. It was kind of funny. It was like Djokovic kind of poking him on like how he gets to every ball and he doesn't quit. Like
he won't die.
He just wishes that he would quit. And then
Alcaraz was in.
Alcaraz like, I'm Spanish, and the Djokovic is like, yeah, I know some Spanish. Basically, I know some Spanish players that have given me a hard time. It was kind of fun.
Oh well, yeah, you're a Nadal guy, so they like that hits home for you. The Alcaraz was actually fighting tears at the end of the match.
I saw a picture.
I mean, he was so invested in it. It wasn't just.
It just wasn't another
for the U.S.
match,
Open. What's that?
It just wasn't another match for him, I suppose. It meant more than a normal match.
Well, and it went for hours. It was. Some people on Twitter are calling it the best 3-set match ever. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but it was amazing to watch. I was watching that instead of preseason football this weekend.
That says something.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go out and just practice lobs and drop shots over and over and over to imitate Alcaraz. Okay, let's get rolling here. A little bit of a market. Let's start with a market recap, I guess, because markets are down. We're recording this kind of as we get towards the end of August. I will say, maybe before we start the market recap, this is a great time to remind everybody to subscribe. I forgot. We've got a new name. Did I send you this on Teams?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about we're the Casual Friday webcast or something, visual podcast. We're the Financial Insights podcast. And so being the marketing geniuses that we are, we fixed the problem by just merging the two names into one.
Yeah, it's just trying to be consistent.
Yeah. So now we are like the Casual Friday Financial Insights. So you can call us Casual Friday podcast. Either way, there's some consistency, and the pictures are kind of the same too. So look at us making strides, marketing strides, or whatever it is. But if you were listening to this newly titled podcast, or if you are watching this on YouTube, I'd say subscribe so you can watch us. We put these together a couple times a month. We are up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I've actually been using Google Podcasts a lot. I feel like it's not as cluttered and it's easier to stream. What do you use to listen to podcasts, Brian?
I use just an app. So it's just it's an aggregator for me. It's called Overcast.
Oh, I used to use Overcast.
So it's just something I'm comfortable with. It streams easy to the car.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely nothing fancy. Because I have maybe 15, 20 podcasts that I will like have streamed every week, and I'll sort through them real quickly. What I want to listen to, in the car, and then that's that.
Do you now some of the ones on Spotify are video?
Okay.
But Overcast is just audio, right?
Just audio. I'm not the greatest at browsing things, so I will, I'll stick with podcasts that I find, and it'll be 6 months, a year before I'll start to go to something else. And it really comes down to if like some of the podcasts are becoming kind of stale and I need more content, then I'll go and browse, but I don't browse a whole lot.
What are you listening to? I know this is not market recap, but what are you listening to? I would say most right now.
I'm always will listen weekly to the All In podcast.
The All In one is yours. Okay.
Yeah, definitely All In. I do actually like health. Maybe like in another world, I should have been in the health field. I listen to like a lot of Peter Attia, Huberman, the Huberman podcast. Like that stuff fascinates
those are
me.
Like, holy moly, Huberman's like hours. I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, they're both like they're long, right? I mean, I kind of miss that. Rogan's not on. He's on Spotify now. Like, and I don't have a subscription, so I don't listen to him anymore.
Oh.
But like I like long form. I like the long form podcasts for sure.
Do you listen to Acquired?
Never even heard of it.
Oh, it's like
Maybe I should.
the longest long form. Like so it's about companies. So I'm listening to the one on Costco right now.
Okay.
But there's the one on Porsche is maybe 4.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
Like it's like a hardcore history length. I don't know if
Yeah.
you ever listen to hardcore history. They're long, but they're good, but they're long.
There's only so much time in a week. I think that's what's like the biggest complaint about podcasts is that if you have a long list of them, it's like, how do you get through them each week?
You don't. I mean, I don't have a commute anymore, and you live really close to the office also. And yes, we still are in the office commuting, but like our commutes are measured in minutes, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I don't piss off. I'll give everyone a hack though, right? Like the best thing if you do listen to podcasts is to mess around with how fast you can listen to the podcast and still understand the words. It sounds a little silly. My wife sometimes will catch me playing a podcast on a trip when we're driving, and she's like, the kids are like, I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding what they're saying because it's going so fast. But like once you get like in tune with it, you can get through the podcast so much faster because I usually listen to them at like about 1.4 per speed, so it's about 40% faster than.
Dude, that's fast.
Yeah, but it allows you to get through a Huberman podcast, which is usually 2.5 hours, right? Because it now cuts it down to maybe it's like an hour and 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
So it helps.
That does. I mean, yeah, that makes it faster. But 4 hours turning into 2 hours listening at 2x is still 2 hours.
Yes.
I don't know. These long ones they're basically audiobooks, for goodness sake.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to ask you more about what you're listening to next week or the next time we do this.
Okay.
But I'm going to send you the Acquired podcast. I listen to All In from time to time, so I need you to send me your second favorite podcast that I don't listen to.
That's fair.
What is it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because it's probably Huberman after that, which you've already heard of. So
all right.
I'll have to go 3 or 4 deep and find
we listen to the same stuff. We both must be financial advisors.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk markets. Let's do a little market recap here. Now that this podcast discussion's out of the way, our naming discussion's out of the way. If everybody listening, watching has already clicked and subscribed and liked and reviewed and done all the podcast and webcast stuff. I'm going to show you, here's what markets are doing. As we record this is from the beginning of August 1 through today. We're recording this on the 22nd. NASDAQ down a little bit more than 5%, S&P down a little bit more than 4%, Dow almost 4%, small caps getting roughed up pretty good, down 7% month to date. So this isn't the rolling 1 month. This is measuring from the beginning of August. What do you think, Ryan?
I guess it's hard that you would have thought by now. I think definitely at the beginning of the year that we would have gotten away from hearing being so worried about interest rates. But interest rates were with us all of last year, and what made last year really difficult. And again, it seems as if when the news stories come out and interest rates aren't going in the direction or the speed that we want them to go, which is down, and now not later. The markets seem to react negatively to it. And this is kind of the first, it seems like the first real kind of negative market that we've had in a little bit. We've been quiet for, the summer months up until now.
Yeah. I mean, we did this before when Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank and First Republic were doing their thing. And I don't think it's a banking crisis, but we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, with deposits coming out and going into other kind of cash equivalent investments, you've got this mixture of like reserve requirements and people taking out deposits with all the banks. And then that could stifle lending, which in turn could make things turn right. So that's not done yet. The stuff that was causing problems before. It seems to me that the beginning of August was a little bit of markets blowing off steam. I mean, July was ripping higher. Right. And so it's not surprising. We can't just rip higher forever. But, we also have a situation here where I'll share my screen. We've got here you go. The era of historically low interest rates would be over. This is an article from the Journal that is kind of verifying what a lot of the worries are right now, which is to say, I think investors had been pricing in interest rate cuts here as soon as this quarter. If you would ask someone in January,
Right.
And it's looking more and more like with rates doing what they're doing, that the Fed is going to continue to squeeze no matter what. And there's a sense that the article was leaked to the Times ahead of the Jackson Hole meeting that's coming here. You want to explain to everybody what's going on at the end of the week?
Yeah, I mean, kind of a quick summary is, we have the Jackson Hole meeting, which is like the meeting for the Fed to further kind of convey where we're going to be going with interest rates. And as Brian mentioned, if you put it earlier into this year, the thought was interest rates were going to be lower sometime in the second half of this year. And now I think the consensus seems to be more like interest rates may go down later next year, like the second half of next year, right? So it's just like it's this moving target, and then the market doesn't like this. The market wants interest rates to go down today. Actually, probably wanted to go down tomorrow, but it just keeps getting pushed out further and further. And the further it goes, you could kind of say that the market's going to be more unhappy the further that the interest rates stay where they are.
Well, we're starting to pivot from. I think we can. It's. You can flip a coin whether interest rates go up another 0.25% in September.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter a whole lot because that huge run that we've had is essentially, if it's not done, it's almost done. But the question then is, how long does the Fed leave this weight hanging around the neck of the economy to slow it down? And if we've talked about this on this podcast before, Kashkari was on the Odd Lots podcast, speaking of podcasts, talking about wanting to get to 5% and leaving it there as long as possible.
Right.
So it's almost as if rates are going to stay high until we have a recession. So if there's a soft landing or no recession, then you can expect rates to be high. And if there's a recession, then they'll be forced, their hand will be forced to use that recession fighting ammunition. But I think the article from the Journal this weekend was basically teasing what the story is going to be on Friday. This is going to get released Friday. So if you're listening to this sometime late Friday, you'll already know the news, but there's this idea that Powell is going to be hawkish and say, we're going to leave rates higher longer.
I will say this, like playing maybe the other side of what the Fed is saying. I've always felt that through all of this interest rate hikes that they were going to have to talk a pretty heavy hand. They couldn't, the language couldn't, take their foot off the gas pedal, because once they change their language, then the markets start to react, people get more happy, and inflation comes back up. So what I'm saying is, like, the idea that we're not going to have interest rates go down until maybe late next year is maybe what they want us to think. Because again, if they tell us, no, we're going to lower interest rates the first quarter of 2024, everything starts to rip, right? The markets start to rip, people start to spend money, and then inflation not being quite under control yet will become a problem again. So,
well, that's exactly what happened over the summer, right? When they skipped in June, and they talked tough but didn't raise rates. Market took off,
right?
And so, the markets, I believing what they do and not what they say. But I think what's unique about Jackson Hole is that this is not a Fed meeting where they're going to raise rates or not. So this is one of the few times where the Fed gets a chance to come out publicly and talk about what they're thinking without taking action. And they'll have another month to be able to take action. But I do think, as they kind of tease these ideas, especially out to the Wall Street Journal, they're trying to take some of the sting out. And that's a lot of what this last week has been about, with markets falling, is because people are kind of having to reconfigure their investments based on kind of new information they've got about what's going to happen with interest rates or may happen with interest rates.
I mean, I think realistically, there's no reason to believe that there's going to be any language this year that interest rates are going to be coming down. Like, I just
Yeah.
don't see it happening before the year end that they're going to change their thought process and start saying to us that interest rates are going to be coming down anytime soon.
Oh, no. We've been, I know I think we both have been saying for a while on here and even to clients, like the Fed wants rates at or just slightly above 5% for as long as possible, because they don't want to go back to zero. That made life so hard, because then they're doing things like quantitative easing and Operation Twist and all this other kind of all these gymnastics that they would much rather use just simple interest rates and bond buying, not have to do all the quantitative easing stuff and just be able to manage things through interest rates. Can't do that if they're at zero. And so they're going to want to keep them as high as possible until they force recession is I guess is my bet. I don't know. Speaking of inflation, let's go to, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. We're talking back to school, right?
Yep. It's August. So
It's August and people are back to school shopping.
Yep.
Right. And this is a couple back to school shopping hit by inflation and higher prices. This is from Axios. Back to school spending is, well, the prices are higher and back to school spending is higher. I don't know. Have you, obviously your kids started school? Did they start Monday?
Yeah, they started last week.
Oh, okay.
Monday. Yeah. So yeah, we went through this, running back to you make 5 trips to Target the first, the end of summer to the first week of school. I went last night to get a lock. It was just it's constant. But
right.
you do, tying into what we've talked about before, which is inflation has been the consistent story for, well over a year now.
Yep.
You start to see it too, as you'll see, here, that the things that we have to buy, this is a big time of year to be spending money if you have kids. It's just kind of a big time of year in shopping in the US right now.
Right.
Is back to school shopping. And so things are more expensive, as you can kind of see through this chart. Historically, this is the last few years, which is, pre-COVID to, where we currently are. Right. And the cost of goods, have gone up. So, normally you're going to spend a lot of money regardless if you have kids in school. Sure. But of course, because of inflation, you're spending more. You could maybe argue that some people maybe are trying to go to maybe some more of the discount stores, trying to buy the same things, but going to places that you could get things cheaper. Because I will say spending's not up. Some of you saw on that graph, there was, some of the expenses are up 25-30%. People aren't spending 25 or 30% more over the last year. But definitely things are more expensive. People are spending in totality more money on than they have in years before.
Yeah. Well, and some things are up more than others, but in total, there's total expected spending and then total expected spending per household. This is from the National Retail Federation on their back to school survey. You can see pretty steadily, and you can see the run up. This is like every other chart. So here we go. 2023 expected spending per household, $890, which totals out to nearly I think it was north of 41 billion total per household
this year. That's the expected number.
And so the blue, yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah, 41 billion. There you go. 41 billion this year, up quite a bit. And compared to, good gravy, 2019 before COVID. Like, look at the chart where it just jumps, Well,
you almost see it. You can see it from 2012 to 2019. It's kind of flattish, right? It's
absolutely
like 7 years of being flat, and then of course you have the COVID years to present. The funny thing about this chart that doesn't make a ton of sense to me is actually 2020. You had this big jump in back to school spending. Granted, like in August of 2020, it seemed like none of us were going to go back to school. So I don't know what I'm saying is I don't know what people were actually spending their money on.
Dude,
your kids were not going back to school.
Bro, you couldn't find a Chromebook to save your life.
Yeah, I guess everyone spent it on the one computer on the one computer that they needed for their kid.
It wasn't even one. It was one per computer per kid. And
Right.
you needed a desk to stick them in your dining room so they could do stuff, and maybe even a lamp. It was, people were buying like crazy because just like home office equipment was up, printers and things. Everybody was essentially outfitting their formal living room like a
Into
elementary
school.
school classroom. And so that jump wasn't necessarily, the
It wasn't
2020 jump
closed.
wasn't necessarily inflation yet. That was
Yeah.
people buying a bunch of stuff that they didn't have to do.
Yeah.
My guess is, I don't know this for a fact, but that jump in 2012, I mean, that's a pretty sizable jump from 23 to 30. That's almost the same as 2019 to 2020. And that's really when the internet started getting into classrooms. And I think, no one owned, the iPhone came out in 07, but no one actually owned one until a few years later. And that's where technology really started to find its way in. I'm willing to bet
That's
in
that's a good guess. People have
that's
to
starting
then
to
buy
happen.
laptops and more computers and all the things that you have to do to keep up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what, and then you get it and it flatlines for a little while. I mean, this is me spitballing, but this is the difference between 19 and 20 is totally investment in like homeschool stuff. These last few years, though, especially this 2023 number, that's inflation, baby. That's
Right.
inflation all the way, no
Right.
doubt about it. And that's the pinch, right?
It's
I
another
mean,
pinch. We try to talk about, gas being more expensive, all of these things are more expensive, going out to eat. And then, again, if you have kids, you got to, come July, August, you're out spending money trying to make sure that your kids have the new clothes and new shoes, new backpack, and so it's going to
groceries,
cost more. It's, like everything else.
everything does. And
Yeah.
and I don't know. We've talked before on this about credit card spending and savings drawdown. And well, this is a perfect time because your topic's a whole lot more fun to talk about, back to school, even though it's inflationary. I'm talking recession, because we've talked before about the sustainability of consumers have powered through all this inflation by using the credit card and drawing down spending. And I know there have been some data points that say, oh yeah, well, but credit card balances like the total number of credit card balances is up, but if you account for inflation, it's not up all that much. But it's really the trajectory and the combination of drawdowns of those COVID savings and the increase in credit card balances. And we're seeing there was even some retail stores reporting that credit card balances weren't being paid. There are more defaults coming. And so this is a chart from the Conference Board showing LEIs, leading economic indicators. And if you, we've talked about leading economic indicators before also here, but the LEI is a series of data points that are forward-looking versus the coincident indicators, what's going on right now, or lagging indicators like the unemployment shows us what was going on in the past. So you can see this is the year-over-year change in LEI, and then the gray bar is the year-over-year change in real GDP. And you can see in the blue bar what goes on before you hit a recession. And there are 3 recessions on here, all punctuated by huge drops in the year-over-year change in LEI. On the far right, you can see the year-over-year change in LEI now, and there is no recession. You can see the gray line has decoupled, and it's like still hovering magically above where it was before. Not unlike where it was in 06, 07. Not saying that this is going to be another 08, but it seems as though what's different this time is that there's a huge cushion from COVID that's allowed people to propel themselves through this inflation. But if you look at the next slide, the red line's the recession signal. And you got the warning signal and recession signal, and we've got the warning and recession signal kind of right on the button at the same time.
The LEI, the index, is made up of, it's like average weekly hours of manufacturing, building permits, manufacturing new orders. And so when this index is made up of, substantial information, right? And when the information is telling you things are going downwards, getting worse, that could become really the problem that we're going to see down the road, right? Like it maybe, like you said, maybe we're kind of weathering the storm at this point, even though if you look at the chart, it's not a pretty chart.
No.
Like usually when you're down at this point, it's just it's more like a matter of when, not if. And
Yes.
so we'll see it. Maybe this time is different. You never want to say that.
I'm glad you said it and I didn't. I think what's different. I think what's
it's not pretty. So one of the other things that I actually looked at, yours is like the year over year index. And I was actually just looking at I looked at a chart just showing the index itself. And we could reference this in probably in the show notes. The one thing I noticed about it is the index actually pretty much goes up and down in straight lines, meaning once it hits its inflection point, it will go down until things get better. It doesn't tend to whipsaw, meaning
maybe it's because this is the 6-month growth rate.
Yeah, yours is 6-month growth rate. The one I was looking at was just the economic index. And like I said, when it's going down, it usually goes down until we hit that inflection point and then things get better. The fact that we are in a trajectory downwards right now speaks to that's probably the trajectory that we're going to kind of continue to stay on until we hit that inflection point.
Well, you said this time could be different. And I think it's not so much that, LEI does. The different part is that LEI isn't going to tell us that a recession is on the way, among other things like yield curve. The difference is that we are headed into this stretch, or we have been headed into this stretch and have been at that recession signal level for a while, but we went into it with a huge reserves, whether it was big credit card balances, big lines of credit, essentially with credit cards that were untapped, or big savings because of for whatever reason, people were locked in their houses and saving money. People were getting checks from the government, PPP loans to companies, those kinds of things. And that's helped us defy gravity for a little bit.
I will say, if you looking at the chart, the index chart, all the inflection points where they eventually, again, we're heading downwards. For every time that it's taken us to go upwards, there's been a recession. All the big inflection points will have going down. Eventually, the chart turns up, but you will see the gray bar there. And this is over 60 years. So, we're talking about 9 recessions, and it takes almost a recession for us to hit that inflection point. And the index then starts to move back up.
Yeah, and it's leading. This is where you get into chicken and the egg. Do the leading economic indicators start to go up? They start going up in a recession because it looks like things are going to start to improve once you're in a recession, because things like interest rates start to go down, which is trying to spur growth. And that's why the Fed's not going to lower rates until we have I don't know. I don't want to go in circles and circles on this. It was just striking that it's pretty clear based on a really reliable indicator, not just the 10s and 2s or the 3-month and 10-year treasury, but also the LEI. I mean, there's nothing definitive, but this is as close as one can get to predict.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to you don't want to see the chart in this territory where it's at.
No, I will say, just to finish this with some good prospects. This is from a tweet from Bespoke, and they put together the percentage of time that returns have been positive in the S&P 500. And these odds are awesome. So even if we have keep in mind the economy and markets and your investments are different things, the S&P 500 is for over a 1-year return is positive 74% of the time, better than 74% of the time. Over 5 years, it's up positive 89% of the time. Over 16 years, it's 100% of the time. And so this is really, really stark proof that, if you have a long time frame and you can sit tight for a minute, you can weather these storms, and the results, even if over a 1-month period, it's closer to a coin flip of the S&P 500 being positive. You start to stretch that out over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. These odds are great.
They definitely make you feel better about investing. I mean, really, people will say you're going to get 90+% chance of making money, over 6 years and beyond. That's a pretty good bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's only, I mean, I don't have the stat to pull, but there's only been a couple times in history where there was a 10-year stretch where it was negative. Now, granted, one of those was when we were sandwiching like the tech bubble burst, Enron accounting scandal, 9/11, and the Great Recession. That was one of those decades. And the others are like the Depression. But still, if I told you, hey, you've got a 97% chance over to have a positive return, you would take that every time, Ryan. If I gave you a pack of baseball cards and said you've got a 97% chance of pulling an Ohtani, you'd be like, yes, I'm in.
It's a sour subject. I was opening cards this weekend, and
no,
it didn't come out my way. So yes, I would prefer these odds versus the odds.
Man, these are great odds. I'll take them all day long.
Yeah.
Okay, so enough doom and gloom. I'm sorry. I had to cover it. I just couldn't resist. Let's go to more interesting stuff. What's on your mind this week?
So I came across just reading a blog post, which you'll put up on the screen. You know, it's one of those topics that I feel like come up a lot, and everyone's streaming, watching TV, you know, streaming wise, less people seemingly watching cable, you know, and I just remember always having these discussions over the last decade, and, you know, clients and friends and everyone was talking about, you know, cutting the cord to save money, right? Like getting rid of your cable service. You're saving, you know, maybe you're paying $100, $120 for your cable service, and you start to just play for these streaming services. And as you can see, you know, back in the day in 2011, it was basically just Netflix, right? And as time has gone on, especially if you look at, you know, at COVID, 2020 to today, look how many streaming services there are. And, you know, it's gone from, you know, if you cut your cable and now have several of these services, you're basically paying the same thing. And so it's just interesting for me to like see where we've come, and, you know, how things have kind of changed over the course of time. Of, you know, we went away from having everything bundled together to having everything streamed, but individually paying all these subscriptions just means that you're paying the same amount, maybe even more, if you're someone that really, you know, watches a lot of streaming TV.
Well, if these are the prices that you're paying for all of these services, these total roughly $95. Now, these are for ad-free tiers, and so some people are doing the ad tiers, which are a little bit lower. Some, I don't know about you, but I end up like Peacock. I think I get for free because Comcast is my cable provider, or is my internet provider.
Okay.
Paramount's bundled into something for, I don't even know. I think you know, things get bundled and things get subsidized, right?
Yes.
Not many people are paying for Apple TV Plus.
Well, you buy Apple TV just to watch Ted Lasso, I feel like, and that's probably it.
Yeah, but what's going on, talking about bundles, yeah, the cable bundle is $100, but these, 7 of these are also $100. But like Apple TV, if you do Apple Music and a little bit extra cloud storage and I don't know, something else, like if you start getting into their bundles where, yeah, Apple TV is $7, but if you're in a bundle, then it's maybe not. I think this is the maximum. No one wants to pay $95 for all this stuff.
Right.
No,
I was just saying it's been something that has developed, I think, over the last, you know, 10 plus years of, you know, making that movement away from cable. And there were so many people that I knew that at the time were, you know, cutting it because they felt like it was a way to save some money. But then you turn into where we are present day, and, you know, the savings maybe is not as great.
Well, it's insidious because you get these subscriptions and then you don't use them. I mean, do you have subscriptions on this list that you pay for and don't watch?
Oh yeah,
Which one is it?
I mean, we don't watch a ton of TV. I mean, I have Netflix, I have Apple TV.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not horrible. But like, you ask my sister, and I'm gonna say my sister probably has maybe all of these. And I don't know that she complains that she doesn't watch all of them, but yet she continues to pay, which is, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah, so I've got every single one of these.
Okay.
Now I'll tell you, Amex gives me the Disney bundle for free, or it's subsidized in some way. So I've got that. My wife subscribes to Walmart Plus, like you get for same day delivery of like groceries and stuff. They throw in Paramount. I get Peacock for free. I've got the Apple bundle, so like I can share storage.
You're paying a portion of that price.
Yeah, so I'm not paying anywhere near. But we also don't watch like it's one of those. My kids watch Netflix. I don't watch Netflix at all. My kids don't watch like linear TV. But Disney Plus, man, that doesn't get watched at all in my house. We only have it because it's subsidized.
Well, and the one hardest part is that, as we've talked about football coming up, the best way to watch football, from what I understand, is actually with an antenna, like an HD antenna.
Oh, better picture.
Yeah, the best quality, and it's technically free. I mean, minus the antenna. So,
Yeah.
What I'm saying is through having all these services,
Yeah,
none of them give you sports. Not many of these really give you a great ability to watch sports, or you could watch those for free.
What? But there's no Red Zone TV, Red Zone channel on broadcast, man. That's like God himself has the remote control for you. That's unless I'm watching the Niners, it's all Red Zone. But the same is true. Streaming though allows you to get niche, right? Because we started by talking about the tennis match over the weekend in Cincinnati. If you don't have Tennis Channel on your stuff, you can just subscribe to Tennis TV, and bang, you've got the
you
thing.
Only have to pay for what you watch.
Right. Do you do that? Like, do you sign up for Apple TV and then cancel it when you're done watching Ted Lasso?
I have. I mean, we and then we haven't watched the last, season or two, but when we want to, yeah, that's what's going to turn out to be. Is just probably a month is all it's going to take to watch the season.
Sure.
And then stop for the rest of the year.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's
cooking for you? What do you think?
So what's cooking for me? I am, let me change this up. So we talked a little while ago about, gosh, I guess it's been maybe a month or more, about kind of like I'm trying to teach my kids about money and budgeting and stuff. And one of the things I found online was that there are a few different kinds of kid debit cards that are good for teens, that you load the debit card. So it's kind of like a prepaid card that you reload, and there's an app that the kids have, so that requires them to have a device, but then they can see how much money they've got and they can spend it and use it like a debit card. And so one of the ones that I landed on, I wanted to try and test it out a little bit. And the one we landed that we're trying now that seems to be working pretty well is Greenlight. This is not an endorsement for Greenlight whatsoever. This is just my own personal experience with my kids that I've been at for about 4 weeks. And so I'll say so far, so good. But it automatically reloads their allowance every week. They check off chores, and both of my kids have their own iPads. So that helps this tremendously. But like Henry can go on his iPad, and if he wants to earn some more money, I can put jobs on there. So if he completes a job that's beyond his chores, he can get paid a couple bucks extra for the work, and he can see how much money he's got. And he gets paid, if he's done all of his chores, he gets paid his allowance on Monday, and he can use it to buy stuff.
So talk to me about your in-store experiences. So your kids have taken these to the store and spent some of the money.
Yeah. So it was a true debit card. So I assigned a PIN that they know. We went to Target. They each picked a toy, and they knew how much they had. And then they went and they checked out and put the card in, did their debit. We got the receipt. I told them to hold on to it. We got in the car and I said, remember, you thought it was this much money, but see this line down here? That's called sales tax. So we got to learn that it's going to be more than the price that you're seeing on the shelf. And then, here's how much you spent. Here's how much is left. Oh, you want to buy more of that thing? Well, you've got to wait till next week, or you've got to do an extra job, etc. It's pretty slick.
Have you
even
noticed anything changed in terms of like their habits or like how they're seeing this?
yeah, Henry has found his hustle. What can I do to earn more money? What can I do
Okay.
to earn more money? So he's 9, Lily's 7. So it's not totally registering yet. She's used to getting what she wants. But when she wants, how she wants. But I think it's helped. There's some videos and kind of YouTube-ish kinds of videos that they can learn and earn points, not for use anywhere, but teaching them budgeting stuff.
Okay.
It's not a perfect exercise, but we've been talking and learning more about money in our house in the last few weeks than we have maybe ever. It's not free. You pay a monthly fee for this. I want to say it's $5. I don't know exactly. And
Who pays
so,
that? Do you pay it or do you
yeah,
tell
you
them
pay.
that's
So I download the app. I load money onto the app. So it's almost like Venmo. And then I control their wallets. And so I can send money to their wallets based on what's going on or take from it even.
right?
But the whole thing, talk about subscriptions, is like here we have, I think it's pricing. I don't know. I don't see that.
I think I saw it was $4.99 a month. I want to say.
Yep. $4.99 a month. And for us, that's all we need. This is a learning tool for the 2 kids. So it's slick. And I will say, if you've made it this far on the audio or the video recording, if you're listening to the podcast, I am going to interview Henry and slap his interview on the end of this recording. And you can hear what he thinks about the card and what his experience was from the perspective of a 9-year-old. I'll post the link to the podcast in the notes of the YouTube video. And so if you just watch this on YouTube, you can click and go to that. But I haven't interviewed him yet. I'm going to be interested to hear what his thoughts are. I mean,
That's
he likes
cool.
having the toy he bought, but I don't know what he thinks about being able to navigate all this.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I'm glad you found something that meets your needs. I might have to give this a try because we're using kind of a bank account right now, like an official bank account. So this might be a good way to, incorporate the spending side of it because, a bank makes it seem like you put the money in, but then when my kids actually have to buy something, it's on my credit card or.
Well, they had piggy banks at home and they'd want to buy something. And so we'd go like to Target. I'd swipe my card and then make them pay me. And I wanted it
that doesn't really teach them quite the same.
No, I want them to feel it more directly because you'd say, oh, you have $20 and they'd find a toy that's $20. And so they learn about sales tax, for example,
Yeah.
I feel like this is more of a direct connection that they're feeling their money being spent in that way.
Yeah.
I will say also, you can break apart their allowance for spending, saving, and charity if you want to.
Yeah.
And so we're breaking that apart a little bit also. They're on their weekly allowance. For teenagers, you can actually separate what they can spend money on. So let's say there's $100 in there. You can make it so $50 can 50 of that can only be spent on gas.
Okay.
Or 20 of it can be spent on meals, or 10 of it can be spent on anything. And so you can actually restrict how it gets spent.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's
if they've got their own phone and you're managing teenagers and finances. So I think it can grow with them, but for $5, so far so good.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, this has been a particularly long one. I think we'll leave it there. Did we miss something, Ryan?
No, I think we covered this was probably one of the longer ones we've probably ever have done.
Yeah, we're going. You like long form podcast, and you just broke off a long form podcast. Well, we'll finish it with this. I hope you like the new name. If you have an opinion about the Casual Friday name for everything, put it in the comments in YouTube or put it in the comments I think we have comments or reviews or whatever for the podcast. Subscribe wherever you're listening to this or watching this because I think it helps get it out there to everybody. And if you have questions or about what we talked about or have questions about the investments, you can always email us at the firm, which is info@fordfg.com. That's a good way. If you're looking for a second opinion or you have questions about investments or markets or whatever is going on, we can help you there. So, Ryan, until next time.
All right. Good time.